Another very warm welcome to you on the other side of the screen. This is Knee Flat Earth with another upload entitled The Flat Earth Nile. Now 75% of the human brain is water and 75% of a living tree is water. Around 72% of the Earth's surface is water covered, and the oceans hold around 97% of all the Earth's water. So there is a lot of it out there, people. Now nearly 97% of the world's water is salty or otherwise undrinkable, and another 2% is locked in ice caps and glaciers that leaves just that 1% for all of humanity's needs. Now water is part of a deeply interconnected system. What we pour on the ground ends up in our water. What we spew into the sky ends up in our water. Now the longest river on the plain is the Nile River. This flows into the Mediterranean Sea. The largest source of the Nile is Lake Victoria, and the Nile has the length of around 4,258 statute miles of flat, stationary water. Now, according to Space.com, they state that the radius of Earth at the equator is 3,963 miles. And according to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, Earth is not quite a sphere, they say. The planet's rotation causes it to bulge at the equator, so Earth's polar radius is around 3,949 miles, which is a difference of around 14 miles. So using those measurements, the equatorial circumference of Earth is about 24,900 miles. However, from pole to pole, the meridial circumference of Earth is only 24,812 miles. Now, let's put that to the test, people. Because if the Nile is measured at 4,258 miles, and using the measurements the spherical Earth demands that we must do, then the Nile, people, has 1,847 miles of hypothetical curved water. And does it? Well, no, because water is always level. Now, Earth was so-called measured by Eratosthenes many moons ago. But did you know, people, that his calculations also work on the flat Earth as well? Because the Earth was flat for a start. Now, the shape caused by flattening at the poles is what is known as the oblate spheroid, yet all so-called real pictures of Earth are ball-shaped. So I ask you, very calmly, why is this? Does the Helio Gang have the answer to this? If it's an oblate spheroid, then why do they shape it as a sphere? Why have NASA been caught using optical illusions and camera trickery only in low Earth orbit to create a disingenuous picture of our ball? This must be total nonsense. It's preposterous, because it can't be both, people, can it? But there is a third option, which is my favourite one, and that's because they know it's flat. And remember, back in 1969, they didn't think that it was chubbier at the poles, and certainly not an oblate spheroid. They needed a ball, and fast. Now, water typically flows downhill, not uphill, but apparently water can flow uphill, as can a puddle of water if it's moving up a dry paper towel dipped in it. Well, of course that will rise up that paper towel. We can observe that, can't we? But there isn't a giant paper towel in the Nile is there. And even more curiously, they actually say now from 2017, Antarctica actually has a river that flows uphill underneath one of its ice sheets. So in order for us to really verify that claim, people, we would have to pop on some rather snuggly woolies and book one of these controlled flights to the chill. Well, water always stays level. And a few more experiments that are out there for your perusal, if you're interested, are the Bishop experiments and Bedford level in recent times. Professor Mark Fonstad of Southwest Texas University demonstrates that Kansas is flatter than a pancake. Thomas Winship conducts numerous experiments in his work Zetetic Cosmogony. Samuel Burley Rowbotham, aka Parallax, people. His work on the Bedford Canal and other British locations in his work Earth is Not a Globe, which demonstrates a flat Earth conclusively. In 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter, there are a number of referenced experiments which demonstrate the Earth's non-globularity. There are referenced experiments in the book Terra Firma by David Warlow Scott, and of course Mr. DeBay's 200 Proofs, and your mince pies, your eyes. And another fact for you people. Remember, surveyors, engineers, architects, they never factor in any such curvature method to any of their projects, nor is the curvature taught in any classroom or lecture hall anywhere on this plane Earth, as it is impossible to do so when you look at the natural phenomenon of the lakes and the rivers of the plane Earth. They are flat and level because so is the Earth. Thanks for watching. Hit the sub and knots if you're new. You stay safe, speak soon, and take care. Thanks for watching.
With all the videos I've made over the years covering the flat Earth, I think it's important to get back to the basics, get back to the fundamentals, with a lot of people newer to the flat Earth truth. And many that believe in the globe model don't even know their own model, with Earth supposedly spinning at 1,100 miles an hour through space and orbiting the sun at 66,600 miles an hour, while the sun supposedly moves through space at nearly 650,000 miles. And that gets into the radius of the so-called ball Earth itself. As you can see here, this nonsense ball Earth. Again, the radius, that's from the surface to the core, again, under 4,000 miles. And definitely based on the radius of the so-called ball Earth, the curve should be tremendous. And we don't get it, obviously, with 71% of the so-called ball Earth being water. And everywhere we look, when water's at rest, it lays flat, as you can see here at the horizon. Of course, the horizon horizontal, as you can see here as well. Water lays flat at rest. And the only time you do see water supposedly curving are in these images, these fisheye lens cameras that give the false perspective, as you can see here. From on top of this spire on the Freedom Tower, you see what looks like the curvature of the Earth, but this is again due to the fisheye lens camera. You can actually obviously see the curvature on this pole. And the same thing with the fisheye lens camera from this perspective. And just take a look here as the camera lens flexes, and now it appears the Earth is concave. So you can't rely on these cameras. Obviously, they create a distorted reality for many, and this is why they think they live in a ball, not knowing what they're looking at is, again, a fisheye lens camera view. And this is a standard camera view with a standard lens, and obviously the horizon is horizontal and flat. And that brings us back to the so-called radius of the ball Earth. And it reminds me of this quote by Tesla where he states, "Today scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. And definitely this is a foundational issue with society, taking math equations as reality when they don't consider what's written in the school textbook. These math equations, they have to obviously match up with our observed reality. As you can see here, the horizon once again horizontal, and obviously, like I showed earlier, with water at rest laying flat. And again, our observed reality, the scientific method, it must be observable, it must be measurable, it must be repeatable. And again, getting back to these images I showed earlier, we're getting different observations. Obviously, they're not adding up, so this cannot be applied as science in the reason you believe in a ball earth. And that gets back to the fundamentals of this video. The foundation of the so-called ball earth, based on this radius of 3,959 miles, and based on that number, we should be able to determine the so-called curvature rate of this ball earth, which of course we're never taught that in the school system through elementary, middle school, high school, college, university. They never tell us the curvature rate of the so-called ball earth, because if they did, people could look further and see it doesn't match our observed reality. But this is how it is. This is how you break it down. Again, based on the radius of 3,959 miles, it comes down to 8 inches per mile square. So for example, the math that would be applied at 5 miles, very simply, 5 times 5 times 8, and you would get 200 inches, and you divide that by 12, and this determines the number of feet you would get, just over 16 feet. And I found this interesting. At 100 miles, it's 6,666 feet. Unbelievable. And by studying and understanding the chart, you can see how gradual the curvature gets. Then it becomes drastic with the so-called curvature of the ball earth. Now, I found this pretty interesting. I found this one website called Vivid Maps with this diagram, this layout of the Great Lakes system profile. It's kind of hard to see here. Let's get a little bit of a close-up on the left side, and you can see all the Great Lakes: Lake Superior, Huron, Erie, Ontario. And basically what it comes down to, you have here with Lake Superior, it's 379 miles from point A to point B. You have the St. Mary's River where it runs down. You see a dam here where it runs down. Of course, it empties off to Lake Huron, which is 223 miles. Then you have St. Clair River, which obviously drains down a bit to Lake Erie. Then you have the Niagara River, then the Niagara Falls itself. But look at the dam structure here. You see, obviously, level water, the dams, as you basically go down further and further. And let's move over the map a little bit here. And you can see, again, going further down from all the dams, then all the water obviously makes its way down to the Gulf of St. Lawrence and eventually into the Atlantic Ocean. But again, this is all about supposedly living on a ball. What's up with all this flat water everywhere and these dams to hold everything flat? And very important, all the mileage combined. I mentioned 379 miles just for Lake Superior, but all this land, the total distance of the floor path is 2,212 miles. And let's take a look here at the curvature rate based on what we have. And to make it a bit easier, I'm going to go to earthcurvature.com to calculate the curvature rate based on 379 miles for Lake Superior. So what you get here is just over 18 miles. So an 18-mile drop, and what do we have? Flat, level water. So for those that believe in the ball earth, you got to start asking questions. Why aren't things adding up with what we're told? You know, the deeper you're looking at things, the more you find. And definitely this is a huge discrepancy with supposedly a 18-mile drop, and we're not getting it. And again, let's get back to the actual floor path, 2,212 miles. And let's see what we get here. 2,212 miles, and you would get over 600 miles of curvature. And obviously with the layout we're getting here, things are not adding up to what we're told with the so-called ball Earth. This is quite obvious what is happening. Obviously, Earth is not perfectly flat. There's peaks and valleys, but definitely we do not live on a ball Earth. Now, and with actual video footage of the Niagara Falls themselves, like I said, the water sinks its level, but when uncontained, it's going to obviously sink its lowest point. And that gets into what you see here with the Antarctica 360 ice wall. People say, well, you state this, but where's your evidence? Well, here's your visual evidence of the 360 ice wall. This video footage from Antarctica that holds the oceans in, contains all the oceans. And basically what it comes down to, again, we have this 360 ice wall that contains all the oceans. Very simple, very easy to understand once you get past the bad stigma of people that say, oh, you're crazy, you believe you live on a flat Earth. But that's all we see. We see flat water, level water, and this is our reality. As you can see here, aboard a plane, obviously airplanes fly over a plane through the air. And also, as you can see here, obviously, we don't live in a ball, 100%. And this image, and that's all it is an image provided by NASA of the so-called ball Earth from space. If you believe in the globe, you believe somehow that rivers can flow up the ball and drain into the Atlantic. Let's take a look here at South America itself. And here is the main channel for the Amazon with all these connecting rivers. And supposedly they're all flowing upstream, up the ball, and draining the Atlantic. Give me a complete break if you believe this. Just like the Nile River supposedly flowing up the ball Earth and draining off into the Mediterranean. Absolutely no way. Now let's take a look at Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana. This is the longest bridge in the world that runs continuously over water. There's longer bridges, but this is the longest one in the U.S. and again, the longest one in the world that runs continuously over water. At 24 miles, and at 24 miles, let's take a look here at the ball Earth, supposed ball Earth curvature rate based on 24 miles. So at 24 miles, let's take a look here and see what we get. We get 384 feet. And let's take a look again at Lake Pontchartrain. And the aspect of perspective really needs to be understood before moving forward when it comes to this bridge in particular, as we get this side angle. And I'm going to put pause right here. And as you can see, the concrete pilings as you move your way along the bridge. And obviously, when you get towards the end, it appears it's actually in the water. And this is, again, about perspective. Just as you see here, the telephone poles are the same height, but due to perspective, the nearest one looks the tallest, and the one in the distance obviously looks shorter. And obviously, there's something called the vanishing point. Just like you see here, it's just a depiction, but these are real, of course, utility lines, utility poles. And obviously the one closest looks the tallest, the one in the distance looks like it's going down. It's not due to curvature, it's just due to how the human eye works. Again, perspective. Just like the sun, how it works in the sky. It doesn't sink per se, it's just due to perspective and how the human eye works. It remains a constant height, and as it circles above the flat Earth, due to perspective, it only appears to go down, when in actuality the sun never sets. And take a look at this footage out at sea with a digital camera zooming in at the sun when it appears to be setting, and you zoom in and it comes back into full display. This shows without a shadow of a doubt that the sun doesn't actually set. It's just due to perspective, like I showed earlier. Clear as day. Same exact concept with the utility, the telephone poles, and as I demonstrated here in this model. So these models that are shown match our observed reality as well. Now getting back on topic with Lake Pontchartrain, again at 24 miles, which would calculate to 384 feet when it comes to the so-called curvature rate. Now just for reference, let's take a look at the Statue of Liberty, 301 feet tall. from the bottom to the very top of the torch itself. And as you can see, obviously, the Statue of Liberty in the New York Harbor. And for comparison, let's compare the size to a human on ground level. As you can see here, very tall. And again, 301 feet tall compared to 384 feet. That would be the drop for Lake Pontchartrain from one end to another. And just another perspective from the very top. And this is back from 1985 when they replaced the torch itself. And as you can see, it's a very long way down. And that gets into, again, Lake Pontchartrain, which we can see from this vantage point. Obviously very flat as a pancake. And again, due to perspective, the concrete supporters, the pilings, as you can see, they appear taller here. In the distance, they appear to be in the water itself. And this is, again, due to perspective and how the human eye works. And for reference, an overhead view of Lake Pontchartrain and the bridge itself. And let's get to this time-lapse footage. As you can see here, I inserted, just for reference, the Statue of Liberty in the water itself. Now you tell me, is there any deviation in the bridge itself that would quantify 384 feet of curvature? Again, the Statue of Liberty itself at 301 feet, and all we see is flat water. And this bridge, for the most part, there are peaks and valleys, as you can see right here. And that's not due to the so-called curve of the earth. That's just based on the bridge construction itself. And I guarantee you, if you ask the engineers who constructed this bridge itself, if you ask them, did you put the curvature of the earth into consideration when building this bridge? And they'll look at you like a deer in headlights. They'll have no response whatsoever, because they obviously do not calculate the so-called curvature of the earth when they constructed this bridge. And again, there are some peaks and valleys in this bridge. There's ups and downs, but nothing in the realm of a 384-foot drop when it comes to the so-called ball earth. I'll play this a little bit more. Again, this is a time-lapse, obviously, but this is a 24-mile bridge, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get to the very end, but we're getting there. And again, no way there's nearly a 400-foot drop from start to finish. Flat as a pancake, no doubt whatsoever. We live on a flat earth. Not only that, it's obviously stationary, God created, and again, unfortunately, the majority of society has been brainwashed, blinded by science, and anytime you present the truth, no matter how objective the proof is, it'll be denied, it'll be ignored, because that's how powerful the programming is.
I mean, I could have said the world was flat.
You know what I think? I think you accidentally told the truth.
Tell us what emotions you had.
Well, when I was standing outside that capsule, it was a very quiet and peaceful moment, you know. At that moment, you look at the world, it looks very fragile. You could see the curvature of the earth.
You've been lied to by textbooks, and that dude who jumped out of a perfectly good balloon, what's his name? Felix Baumgartner, he would have been about 2 millimeters above the surface of this globe. That's his edge of space jump. Now, you know, I don't, it's fine. He wants to, I don't have a problem if he does it, but the honesty of it would greatly diminish what I think people thought he was actually doing. And not only that, they made sure to photograph him standing there with a really wide-angle lens, which curves horizontal lines. Right. So in the photo, you see this curvature of Earth's surface, and he said, wow, he's in space, look at that.
You could see the curvature of the earth.
No, he's not. At that height, you don't see the curvature of the earth if you are 2 millimeters above this beach ball. You just don't. That stuff is flat. That stuff is flat. That stuff is flat. You've been lied to by textbooks.